Hello everyone. Today we're going to make a reaction to Geography Now Russia. So this time we're going to be learning about the largest country in the world.
Hey everyone, we've reached Russia, the big guy. You've probably heard of him. For this episode, I really wanted a real Russian to co-host with me. One guy immediately popped up. Say hi to Mr. Mike.
Okay,
Born and
Mike.
raised in Russia, in childhood, speaks the language, knows the culture. This dude is my go-to Russian guy.
Quick disclosure, Russian
I've lived here in the States
is spoken in
3 times longer
Belarus,
than I've lived in Russia.
Kazakhstan,
That said, where I falter,
Kyrgyzstan.
this is a preemptive apology.
Well, thank you, Mike. Either way, it was either you or that.
Well,
I
I'm
got
just
my
going
street.
to about to say.
Oh, see how slim our options were? You're the best I got.
Well, honestly, let's see how this will go. Let's learn about Russia.
Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs.
Alright then,
Mike,
this is
Russia
educational
is a big
video.
country that everyone has heard of. Big, unique, and above all, it's a country many of you guys have been waiting for on this channel.
And this is going to be a pretty big episode.
Alright.
We're going to cover as much as we can without rushing into it.
Приветствуем вас на русский эпизод.
Okay, let's learn about Russia.
Now, as we all
Well,
know, by
Bulgarian
land
is
area,
similar to
Russia is
Russian,
the
but they're
largest
not the
country on
it's
Earth.
not the
country is
closest
so
language
big, it's difficult to even get an
language.
accurate two-dimensional flat cutout of the nation due to the width of their land straddling a spherical arc on Earth's surface.
And with lots of space comes lots of interesting geographical anomalies.
Russia is so big that it has about 1/8 of all inhabited land on Earth and almost the same amount of surface area as the entire planet of Pluto. Russia is a transcontinental country that straddles
I don't know
both
if it's
Eastern
bigger
Europe
than
and
Pluto and
Northern Asia, a larger
Antarctica.
landmass known as Eurasia. It is often
This will be
understood
the
that the
thumbnail.
European part of Russia, where about 77% of the population lives, is everything west of the Ural mountain range. And
Russian
the remaining
is in
23%
European
live on the
language.
east side. At about 6,600 miles or 9,000
Siberia
kilometers
is on the
east to
Asian
west,
side.
the country covers 11 time zones and the longest border in the world with 14 different countries. Yes, even North Korea at the very narrow tri-point with China. In addition, they recognize two more disputed areas that they border, North Ossetia and Abkhazia, as countries, even though the international community recognizes these areas as part of Georgia. Also, the country has military bases in 9 countries abroad, including the breakaway state of Transnistria in Moldova. Keep in mind, the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the world's first and largest space launching facility, is actually leased out to Russia until 2050 and acts as like a Russian exclave. The country is divided into 85 federal subjects, 2 of which are disputed, and all are divided further into 6 categories. The 46 oblasts or provinces, these are the most common subjects with direct control from the central government. Keep in mind, the westernmost point of Russia is actually in this detached exclave known as the Kaliningrad
Which
Oblast.
is between
Then you have the 22 republics.
Kaliningrad
These are
is
nominally
between
autonomous
Poland
areas
and
that have the right to
Lithuania.
their own constitution and language alongside with Russian, as many of them are inhabited by ethnic minorities with their own cultures. Then you have the 9 krais, or territories, which are basically just oblasts, but with a historical tie to being frontier regions, many of which are sparsely populated. You have the 4 autonomous okrugs, or districts, which are like little sister areas that have a certain level of autonomy, but are still subordinate to a certain oblast. These 2 oblasts are in charge of these 3
as I was going to
okrugs,
say,
whereas the
it's a
Chukota
little bit
Autonomous
longer,
Okrug
so
is the only one not subject
tomorrow
to
will be
oblast or
Bulgarian
krai. Then you
episode.
have one strange
Belarusian
unit known
and
as the
Ukrainian
Jewish
are
Autonomous
closer to
Oblast,
Russian.
which was kind of like a deliberately created entity that was supposed to be a new home for Russia's Jewish population, even though today less than 1% of the population is Jewish, but it's still called the Jewish Autonomous Oblast. And finally, you have the 3 federal cities, the 2 largest ones, Moscow, the capital of the country, and St. Petersburg, as well as the controversial disputed Sevastopol, located on the controversial Crimean Peninsula that is claimed by Ukraine and Russia claims as the Crimean Republic. This is a tricky subject we'll talk about later. In short, these 3 cities kind of operate as their own regions and are
this
not
episode
subject
was
to
made
any
in
oblast.
2020, so
And that was just the administrative division section. We didn't even get into all the other weird stuff.
Like how this guy wants to revive the House of Romanov and possibly buy land in the Balkans for a micronation.
Or how the California Independent Republic actually has an embassy in Moscow.
Or how they once had sovereignty over Alaska for over
Alaska
100
in the
years, known
California?
as Russian America, and was like, aha! I got a piece of America. How you doing, settlers?
Not so good.
Oh man, this war against the Ottomans is costing me a fortune. I need money.
Whoa, there's a gold rush on the west coast in California. Let's all go, now.
The Americans and the British Canadians might get closer and try to take over. It will cost more to defend my American territory that I don't even pay any attention to. Maybe I should just sell it. Hey, UK, you interested?
I've got quite enough Arctic tundra. I think I'm quite all right.
USA?
All that frozen, useless land, you better sell it to me for cheap.
And that's how they sold it for only 7.2 million, which by today's inflation rates would be equivalent to about 130 million or about 2 cents per acre.
For what it's worth, though, Russia kind of got its general land territory we know today from the conquests, mostly the
Alright, then.
Cossacks that ended in the late 17th century, led by this dude.
What is a Cossack? Well, long
Sorry.
story short, it's kind of like this.
I'm so sick of this pent-up aggression. I just need to get out of this town and get in a fight or something.
Hey, you're an intrepid guy with a death wish who probably wouldn't mind maybe dying. How would you like to go out and get paid to do that for my country?
How?
Just like go out
Sorry.
and make alliances with the locals, or I don't know, kill them. Just give me more land. It's an adventure.
Like a mercenary or something.
Let's not call it that, but something like that. And that's basically how Russia grew from this to this.
In any case, there's a lot more to the Russian scene than just political divisions. The capital and largest city is Moscow, where nearly a tenth of the entire population lives. It is the largest European city, and as of 2020, is one of the top 20 largest cities by city proper on Earth, with over 13 million.
Russia and
people.
Germany
Here, of
are the
course, you
most
can find the three
populated in
biggest and
Europe.
busiest airports. Otherwise, St. Petersburg, the second largest city, has the fourth busiest airport. Just to skip away, St. Petersburg does hold the largest shipping port, the port of St. Petersburg, right on the coast of the Gulf of Finland. The country has thousands of islands and islets.
And there's also Samara city in Russia.
The largest one,
Alright.
Sakhalin, located in the Pacific. Going up, you see these two little guys here, the Diomede Islands. Yep, the big one on the left belongs to Russia, and the small one to the right belongs to the USA. And they sit right on the international date line, effectively meaning that even though they are only about 2 miles apart, Big Diomede Island is an entire day ahead of Little Diomede Island. Speaking of which, they have about 23,000 miles of coastline, fifth longest in the world, mostly in the Arctic, giving them the largest EEZ claim over the Arctic Sea. The country has a few territorial disputes. In Asia, you have the Kuril Islands in the east with Japan, where both claim ownership over these islands just off the coast of Hokkaido. In the Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan claims these 3 islands that are currently under Russian control. And finally,
Kazakhstan will be reacting for August.
Recently,
I did
Ukraine
Japan.
and the Crimean Peninsula. In the
I don't think I'm gonna react to the Ukraine
2014,
episode.
Russian troops took over and essentially the entire area was annexed by Russia following a controversial referendum, as most people there are Russian and voted to secede themselves back to Russia. To this day, the international community does not recognize this referendum as legitimate, but the area is still de facto run by Russia. This means that even further than Crimea, the entire Sea of Azov is also disputed. Otherwise, if you look at the population density map of Russia, most people east of the Urals actually live close to the famed Trans-Siberian Railroad, the longest rail line in the world that traverses the entire country, effectively giving them access to other nations like Mongolia, China, and even further.
Alright, Mongolia also in August. China is as well be reacting in the not here.
The Chukotka Autonomous Okrug. And anyone wishing to go there must fly or probably take an uncharted boat from the other coastal areas along the Pacific. Whew, that was a lot of information.
Alright.
So let's just skip over to the list of notable places.
Some of the top places you
Alright.
guys, the Russian geography suggested.
Alright, then
Russia,
let's
there were
learn.
2 places left.
Okay.
Dargov City of the Dead.
Alright, then.
Mausoleum, Izmailova Kremlin,
The Moscow metro stations,
Temple of all religions, Tsar-Bell,
the Dostoevsky Theater,
the Wagner
Well.
Museum in St. Petersburg,
Hotel Ukraina,
Bolshoi Zavadsky Island,
Ukraina.
Freud's Dream Museum,
Whalebone Alley,
the Sovolki Monastery and Army Base in Gulag,
Ulan-Ude Ethnographic
Okay,
Museum,
this is a
the
lot of
mummified
places.
remains of this guy.
the most famous statue probably being the worker and kolkhoz woman. They've
And
even
there's
built
the
tallest
motherland.
statue of a woman in the world.
There are, of course, so many
Church
churches,
is
mostly
Orthodox.
so
I'm
many
all
amusement
for that
parks.
too.
And Mike, the most top
Alright.
famous places would probably be
The Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral, the Winter Palace, and Peterhof.
all right. Well, that was a lot of heavy information. Russia is no joke when it comes to contrast.
Much like the landscape, which brings us to
Okay, let's learn about physical
When it
geography.
comes to the physical makeup,
Alright,
Russia
then.
is kind of like an ice cream shop. I mean,
Okay,
yes, most of the country experiences cold and freezing temperatures, but being the largest country on Earth area-wise means you're going to have a lot of different physical regions. So it's kind of like
Alright.
different.
Mostly the cold comes from Siberia.
The country starting in the west begins with the flat and relatively lush European plain. From there, you have the Caucasus Mountains in the southwest, where you can find the highest point, the tallest point in Europe, Mount Elbrus. Just to skip away, you find the Volga River Delta, the largest delta in Europe, fed by
Volga
the Volga
Delta.
River. The Caucasus and Ural Mountains together make up the boundaries of what is considered European Russia. And from there, Asia begins with this massive area known as Siberia, divided into the West Siberian Plain, where the mighty Ob River flows, the North Siberian lowland, and the Central Siberian Plateau. Just
See?
south along the border of Mongolia, you have the Sayan
Okay.
and Yablunovy Mountains, where you can
Alright
find the
then.
largest lake of Russia and the deepest in the world, Lake Baikal, which, by the way, has some of the only freshwater seals on Earth. It is fed by a tributary on the longest river of Russia, the Lena, which flows northward into the Arctic. From there, you have all these other mountain ranges that shield the Kolyma.
Alright, there's also Siberia, as the tigers does live in Russia. They're also known as Siberian tiger. Alright then.
All sitting on the Ring of Fire. In fact, the Kamchatka and disputed Kuril Island chain have more volcanoes out of anywhere else in the country at about 200, about 60 of which are still active. The three most active and continuously erupting ones being Karimsky, Kizimen, and Shivoluch. Keep in mind, up north, the Arctic Ocean is actually divided into 5 separate seas on the Russian side: the Chukchi, the East Siberian, the Laptev, Kara, and Barents Sea. And here you can also find the northernmost point of Russia's domain, the Franz Josef Land Islands. They are right above Nova Zemlya, which has the largest glacier in Europe, and also the site where the largest atom bomb ever was dropped. Fun fact, amidst all this land, about 60% of it is classified as being part of the Siberian taiga or taiga forests, which are forests situated in colder climates with deciduous trees like oak, birch, and spruce. This is the largest forested area on Earth.
Okay.
Yes, even
I
the
didn't say
Amazon,
anything.
which to the south of
No,
Russia,
no,
is
no.
classified
I
under
said
the
okay.
steppe zone, or massive expanses of
Okay,
grassy
we have
land
region.
with few trees, ideal for agriculture with moderate temperature and sunshine and moisture. Otherwise, the further north you go, the less hospitable the conditions get, and you reach the tundras and cold deserts, where very few people dare to live, but many resources are locked away, such as the numerous oil and natural gas reserves.
Polar bears
hidden
also
the
live in
interior and offshore
Russia.
sites in Siberia
Besides
and Arctic.
Norway.
Russia actually has the largest natural gas reserves in the world, making them the largest natural gas exporter and the largest oil producer in the world. Most of these petroleum resources are managed.
Keep in mind,
by state-owned
Saudi Arabia
companies like
is.
Gazprom, Lukoil, and Rosneft. Whew, lots of land and lots of stuff happening in it.
Russia's economy ranks as the 11th largest by nominal GDP and 6th largest by purchasing power parity in 2020.
Back to resources though,
Alright
agriculture in
then.
Russia is kind of limited.
2020
Only
was
about
6 years
0.1%
ago.
of the 1 billion acres of arable land is used for permanent agriculture, and they only have a short 2 to 4 month harvest season.
This is due to much of the area covered in full or semi-permafrost, which is not ideal for crop production.
One thing it does produce though are these interesting
Alright
geological
then.
formations known as pingos, which implode into massive craters, which fill up into ponds, making the landscape the most trypophobic triggering region on Earth.
Oh, get it away from me!
All the strange cold water
Sorry.
and wind eruptions
Okay,
also the
not
reason
sorry.
why Russia has
I
incredibly
was
distinct
apologizing
remote
for my
rock
finger.
formations found all over
Alright.
along the taiga and steppe regions.
This means almost all farming happens in the southern areas of Russia, where the climate is slightly warmer and accommodating.
Nevertheless, even with the limited industry, Russia still ranks number 1 in producing certain crops
Alright.
such as buckwheat, barley, oats.
Second
sugar
largest
beet,
is
currant,
Canada
gooseberries,
in
and
the world.
potatoes.
In addition, they are the largest palladium and diamond producer in the world.
When you think of Russia immediately, you think of cold. I mean, they do have the coldest inhabited town on Earth.
But Russia actually has the largest temperature range on Earth recorded as well. The town of Verkhoyansk can go from 37 degrees in summer to negative 68 in winter, making a 105-degree difference.
Technically, the fringes of the Caspian Sea in the south are also considered semi-arid desert zones, making them some of the warmest regions in all of Russia.
And some of the surrounding landscapes you could swear were
Alright,
northern
then.
Africa or the Middle East, with sand dunes and camels.
And speaking of camels, animals. The country has over 260 mammal
Snow
species
leopards.
and nearly 800
There is
bird
a
species.
snow
Animals
leopards.
you may have heard of, such as the Siberian tiger,
Like I said.
Asiatic black bears, Eurasian lynx.
In the tundra regions, you can also find polar bears,
Polar
reindeer,
bear,
walruses,
walrus,
narwhals,
like I-
foxes.
In the warmer
Narwhals.
areas, you have wolverines, as well as that strange saiga antelope with its weird elongated nose.
Of course, it wouldn't be Russia without the national
Little bear.
animal, the Eurasian brown bear.
So yeah, Russia. It has deserts, and it can be over 100 degrees, imploding permafrost, and active volcanoes constantly erupting as we speak.
And finally, to finish all of this segment
Alright,
off,
then.
food.
Now, of course,
Let's
due to
learn
the
about
vast,
food.
wide domain and numerous ethnic groups found in Russia, the country has an
Russia
enormous
has
range of
also
regional
created
cuisines.
Tetris,
Common theme you'll notice is that
also
Russians
created
tend
the
to
car
cook
brand
a lot of
Lada.
vegetables, since the harvest season is short and crops are not available in the colder months.
Anyway, just add
And Kamaz is a Russian truck
Bam, you're in
band.
the Russian zone.
Some of the more widely known and popular dishes
Well.
you guys, the Russian geography, suggested:
Alright, then.
stroganoff, blini, chicken Kiev, golubtsi, lots of different types of rye bread, many types of piragi. They have their own way of doing ice cream and meringue desserts. Caviar is
Sorry.
a big deal in Russia, especially from
yeah.
sturgeons. Many
I
soups
don't
were a
need that.
big soup and salad culture. You have things like shi, borscht,
Borscht. originally in
menu with
Ukraine.
salads include
Borscht originally came from Ukraine.
And they celebrate on New Year's and they eat it on New Year's.
It's not a party unless that's
Russia doesn't celebrate Christmas until January, so Russia celebrates Christmas in January. So
stealing the recipe.
Stole from the Belgians New Year's. Got it. Now, we could go on, but it would take forever because Russia has over 180 recognized ethnic groups, which each have their own distinct culture.
Speaking of which, I think that's just about the right time to transition to.
okay, let's learn
In
about.
regards to Russian people, Fyodor Dostoevsky once said, "It's frightening to see how free
Alright.
a Russian man's spirit is, how strong his will. Being a Russian carries a powerful meaning to the Russian people. It's a title of honor and pride many of them take."
The country is made up of about 143
All
million
right.
people. It is the most populous nation in Europe, and as of 2020, the 9th largest country in population on Earth. About
Well,
80% of the
Bangladesh
country
has more
identifies as ethnically
population than
and
Russia.
The remaining 20% come from one of the 180 or so ethnic minorities found throughout the country, the largest one being the Tatars at about 3.7% and Ukrainians at about 1.4%. From there, you have everything else from the Bashkirs, Chuvash, Karelian, and so on. Keep in mind, many of these minority groups are East and Central Asian in their heritage, like the Yakut and Tuvan and Altai peoples who speak Turkic or Mongolic-based languages and are not Caucasian like the majority of people that identify as Russian. They use the Russian ruble as their currency. They use the types C and F plug outlets, and they drive on the right side of the road.
Russian, of course, is the national language. However, the republics are allowed to have their own co-official languages as well.
Oh, and speaking of which, Russian cursive is like the most mind-blowing sight to see.
Now, with Russia, you have a lot of backstory, but the best way to probably start off is by understanding the Slavs.
In Europe, there are three main powerhouse ethno-linguistic groups: the Germanic, the Latin, and the Slavic. Slavs are the largest
I'm
one,
also
and Russians
Slavic.
make up the highest population of Slavs.
Their roots are documented from Roman times. And
Well,
they have
I
spread
am.
all throughout Eastern,
Well,
Central,
I
and
was
Southern
born.
Europe.
Well, I'm in the. I come from the south, Slavic.
In the world have a background in Orthodox Christianity, which was kind of like a further
Well,
stem
Poland
from
is a
the
Catholic,
Byzantine
so
Empire.
If you don't
I'm
know what
still
any of
Eastern
that stuff
European.
is, basically in like the 4th century, Europe was like,
"Oh no, I'm dying. The Germanic people keep attacking. I'm losing money and nobody wants to claim Caesar as divine. Help me, my predominantly Hellenistic Greek-influenced subjects to the east."
Psh, good luck. I'm doing my own thing. I also made my own capital, and I'm ditching that polytheistic stuff for Christianity.
And then in the 11th century, it was like,
So what's your problem? Why do you want to split up?
well, besides the secondary dogmas we disagree on, we mostly don't like your practices.
Well,
I don't
Russia
think
is
the Pope
old.
has any authority over the church.
Russia
Yeah,
has.
You guys have patriarchs.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing. Those are like regional managers. Also, you guys have way too many creepy statues. We believe priests should be allowed to marry, and we kind of like growing out our beards.
Well, yeah, well, at least we
Well-
play actual musical instruments during Mass.
there's a lot more that goes
Well,
on, but getting into
as
the
I was
solid
about to
references
say,
it would take forever to explain.
that-
In any case, less than half of the population
that-
of Russia actually
well,
adheres to the
I
faith,
was
and
going to about to
30% of
say-
the country identifies as either spiritual but not religious or unaffiliated.
Well, I
against
was about to say.
Aside from all that,
I'm
it
also
is
Eastern
important to note
European.
that not
I was born
everybody
in
Russia
the.
is Slavic
My
or
language is
I
a
already
South
made a video
Slavic.
explaining about these, so we don't really have to talk too much
Alright,
about it.
then.
Just watch the video. But basically,
Alright,
you have
then.
everything from the Turkic, Mongolic, Circassian, Uralic, and even Inuit peoples in the far northeast Arctic regions.
They even have the westernmost Buddhist community on Earth in Kalmykia.
Interesting. They didn't know
Kamika.
that. Now, compared to the rest of Europe, Russia does have a high birth rate and immigration rate.
Nonetheless, they also have a relatively high death rate, especially. In fact, today women outnumber
Sorry,
men in
then.
Russia at
Well, yes,
1.8
in some countries there's
There's a lot more women. In Russia,
more
the
women, but in
kind of
but there's
visible,
other
and
countries
So
opposite
it's
where
not
there's
uncommon to
more.
see women dressing up in full presentation mode with heels and nails done, even just to go to the store to pick up milk.
To dive further into the social dynamic,
Alright.
you have to kind of understand Russia has gone through a lot of eras throughout its history.
Alright.
Basically, they've had kingdoms, invasions, expansions, wars, empires,
Sorry.
unions, and most notable
Sorry.
era, the 20th century communist era.
The word has an almost ubiquitous connotation.
Oh,
with
wait,
the country
that's
of
the
Russia.
Soviet
This is why
Union.
you hear a lot of those distinct Soviet communist era words and phraseologies used in media like proletariat, bourgeoisie, means of labor, comrade.
They were the first nation to extensively kick off and implement the political
October
ideology
Revolution.
constitutionally after the October Revolution, and furthermore, they spread it abroad.
I mean, that's kind of what the whole Warsaw Pact and Eastern Bloc things were during the Cold War, and it goes even further than that.
All right, we just destroyed those Nazis. Awesome job, man.
Excuse me.
Really cool working with you.
Excuse me.
Yes, my lord. It's a great pleasure to destroy
Sorry.
your land.
Well, I I guess my European friends and I should help Germany set up a free market system. Privatize their corporate policy.
Well, excuse me that. Well, actually, the Soviet Union was the first country to be in the to enter the Battle of Berlin, not United States. Well, as I was about to say, I just don't.
Is this really happening?
Well, it's educational. I don't think I like to name the World War II Germany.
In the 50s, it was like,
Alright then.
Influence north, you influence south.
and in the 70s,
I support north.
I support South.
And so on. Which begs the question, what exactly is communism?
Alright.
Although there are many schools of thought and varying definitions, in the shortest way
Alright then.
summarizing, communism is a philosophical,
Alright.
political, social, and economic
Alright then.
movement derived much from the writings of Karl Marx.
Karl Marx was
The
German.
ultimate goal is to establish a common ownership and means of production by the people and the state. Or in simple form, you don't technically own anything. Everyone technically owns everything on paper. But the state gets first dibs and distributes what it deems as most efficient, technically, kind of, but not. It's weird. It's weird.
Anywho, after
Alright.
the fall of the Soviet Union in '91, they changed their system of operation. Legislatively, on paper, Russia classifies itself as a federal dominant party, semi-presidential constitutional republic, with an emphasis on a heavily state-run
Soviet
economic
Union
model
speak
and
Russian.
conservatism as a popular ideology.
Well, there
This
was Russian
party,
Empire.
United Russia, holds about 3/4 of the seats in the Federal Assembly.
And it's semi-presidential because the president is head of state, whereas the prime minister is head of government. However, it's a lot
Excuse me
more
then.
complex than that. Mike, what would you say?
So this is a country that is notorious
Alright then.
for changing the rules as they play the game. I sort of see it
Alright
as
then.
an oligarchy.
Okay, so that being said, let's highlight some of the notable cultural traits and accomplishments that Russians are known for.
For one, Russians were pioneers in the space race and kicked off the age of space exploration.
Well,
Here's my buddy Destin from Smarter Every Day talking about it.
All right, Paul, if you're going to talk about
Alright
Russia,
then.
you've got to talk about aerospace engineering because they are impressive. It all started back in the day.
Well,
when the Russian
Yuri
visionary
Gagarin
MC
was the
Kosky
first
came up with
person
this
to be
momentum balance for rockets,
entered the
which
space.
became known as
Well,
the
there was
rocket
also the
equation.
dog,
Back in the early
Laika.
days of space flight, the Soviet Union kicked off the space race by launching Sputnik, the first satellite in space. Moved forward through the space race, Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. That was a really big deal. Fast forward to today, and you realize that Russia and the United States are not just collaborating, there's a full-on partnership between the two nations. No matter what political situation is going on the ground, these engineers, NASA,
Alright.
the Russian aerospace industry, they've been working together to make human space exploration possible. The International Space Station, one of the
Alright
most
then.
amazing things ever made by humans, has been a platform for persistent human presence in space since the late
Excuse me.
1990s. I love this
Alright.
thing. Also, the Russian Soyuz spacecraft, developed in the early 70s, has proven itself to be the workhorse of human spaceflight. This stuff is awesome. Thanks for letting me say that. If you're doing a video about Russia, you have to talk about rockets because Russians are good at rockets. Why don't you have a segment for each country about the rockets that are like? I know how you edit. You're going to cut me off now. You can have a
And aside from the space race, there are many discoveries
Alright.
and inventions attributed to Russian innovators. Here's just a few of them that we will put on a full screen montage.
They even invented the game Tetris. In
Like I
fact,
said.
their theme song is a Russian folk song called Trabini. Ой, полным-полна моя коробушка есть и сытцы, и парча.
This group
Alright
will
then.
have also created the earliest form of the periodic table, and some elements are actually named after
Alright.
Russians and Russian places, including the guy himself.
They're also the pioneers of stem cell research and numerous surgical procedures like heart and lung transplants.
Even amongst the diverse republic areas, there are some universal Russian customs and
Alright.
traits that show
Just ignore the
some regional
notifications.
All Russians take
Well.
holidays and festivals very seriously and enjoy their times of celebration. Christmas was effectively brought up to New Year's, and instead of Santa Claus, they have Ded Moroz, basically translates to Grandfather Frost.
Grandfather
Later
Frost.
iterations give him a little sidekick, Sneegurочка.
Otherwise, all over you have other
Alright
festivals
then.
celebrated like these. Women's Day is a huge one.
It's a common misconception that Russians are genetically acclimated
Sorry.
to the cold.
Explain.
We just handle the cold better because we bundle up better.
But you guys do have that like banya sauna
Sorry.
culture, and you guys jump into the ice water a lot, right?
Oh yeah.
In addition, Russians are known for excelling in a
Alright.
range of sports, most notably ice hockey, wrestling, figure skating, and gymnastics. They have consistently ranked high in the Olympics and ranked the
Well, there was a World Cup in Russia back in 2018, so
They hosted in Sochi.
Which has a stream of following controversies. Chess is a huge part of their culture. The game of cold logic rewards cunning and has always spoken to the Russian. Some of the top chess players in the world have come from Russia.
The 1830s Romantic era was sort of
Okay,
seen
the
as like the golden
1830s.
age of Russian writing.
Some of the top notable authors like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Chekhov, given the honor and prestige of Russian literature.
Russians have an incredibly long Rolodex of folk music that dates back centuries,
And many native instruments are still used to this day, like the bayan accordion, the sviro flute, strings like the dobra, guzli, and the most famous of all of them, the triangle-shaped balalaika.
Balalaika. Well, I don't understand Russian. I only know the song, folk song Kalinka, and the Russian word that was used in CS:GO.
Russia has many
Alright
artists
then.
spanning across a wide spectrum of genres, movements, and styles.
Russia also has a history of animation.
It wasn't until 1935 that Soyuz Multfilm, Russia's largest animation studio, was started.
That's the
We all
created.
know about this. «Ну, погоди», «Спокойной ночи, малыши», «Чебурашка», «Ежик в тумане».
Otherwise, what are some last minute things you would like to tell us about what it means to be Russian, Mike?
Without trying to be dismissive,
Alright then.
Russians kind of like to fetishize their own suffering. It's like Russians don't live, they survive. Or other things. It's considered weird to smile at people you don't know.
Why is that?
You don't trust them.
Alright
Never
then.
give a knife as a gift. It's seen as a severing of ties. Russians are a very hospitable folk. Many will invite you into their homes and will display either sadness or offense if you refuse. Once you've made it in, they will often bribe you to stay with things like tea, conversation, booze. In Russia, middle names are not chosen by their parents. You are born with one. It is your paternal name. So my father's name is Yuri, therefore my middle name is Yudevich.
And that applies to women as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Women, you get a male name for your middle name. All right, with that said, here's a brief
yeah.
condensed history of Russia.
Alright.
Early dispersed Slavic tribes.
Alright.
The Rus unifies them.
The Kievan Rus.
Vladimir the
Kievan
Great.
Rus.
Mongols invade.
Ivan the Great.
Ivan the Terrible.
House of Romanov begins.
Alright
Peter
then.
the Great.
Catherine the Great.
Crimean War.
Alright.
Serfdom abolished.
Alaska.
Alright then.
Russo-Japanese War.
Alright
World
then.
War I.
Rise of the Soviet Union with Lenin's Bolsheviks.
Royal Romanov family is deposed.
As depicted by that incredibly accurate cartoon,
Communism.
Lenin
Alright.
dies. His body is ripped,
Sorry.
involved, and put in display, but okay.
Stalin dictator years.
World War II. Germany breaks
sorry.
agreement and tries to invade Russia.
Big mistake.
Cold War begins.
Alright.
Nuclear arms race and space
Alright
race
then.
with the USA.
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Summer Olympics in Moscow.
Gorbachev reforms and wins a Nobel Peace Prize.
Boris Yeltsin wins first popular presidential election.
Fall of Soviet Union.
Chechnya unsuccessfully tries to break away.
Putin voted in for the first time, serves 2 terms, then after a brief hiatus, voted in a 3rd time.
Business and digital era boost Russia's economy.
Georgia-Russia war.
Russian troops take over Crimea.
Controversial referendum.
And here we are today.
And there's a lot
Alright
more we
then.
could have expounded on, but there isn't enough time, so if you'd like to add anything, please write it in.
Alright then.
In any case, we've already mentioned some
Alright.
famous Russians in this episode, but here's a list of some more notable Russians, historic and modern.
Some of the most famous authors include people like these, but the most famous ones might be
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Vladimir Nabokov, Nikolai Gogol.
a lot of famous actors and directors, but some of the top ones being people like
Klara Rumanova, Anatoly Papanov, Vladimir Vysotsky, Andrei Mironov, Anton Yelchin, Alla Pugacheva, Valery Syutkin, Boris Grubishikov,
statesmen and war heroes like
Alexander Nevsky, Georgy Zhukov, Mikhail Kutuzov, Valentina Tereshkova, Vasily Zaitsev, Alexander Pakryshkin,
tons of athletes like these.
Lev Yashin, Olga Korbut, Irina Rodnina.
And there's a lot more. Please
Alright
add
then.
them in the comments if we missed it.
Alright
Those are
then.
just my favorites.
As you can see, Russia is not just a country, but almost like its own world in
Alright
itself.
then.
And speaking of the world, that brings us to
Let's learn about friend zone already.
With Russia, diplomacy has played a very unique role throughout the past few centuries, even before Cold War times.
As a transcontinental nation, they've always had kind of their hands in both European and Asian affairs, but it doesn't really stop there.
For Africa, 7 countries had governments that were actually influenced by Marxist ideologies brought in partially by Russians during Cold War times. These countries developed the closest ties diplomatically with Russia. It also explains why the flags of Angola and Mozambique have images inspired off the former Soviet hammer and sickle emblem. In Asia, things go all the way back
Well,
to the
Asia,
era of
there's
expansion
China and
Russia
North
conquering
Korea.
lands east of the Urals. Today, 4 countries in Asia are categorically classified
And,
as either constitutionally communist or led by
and
the
Laos.
Communist Party, primarily influenced by what was back then Communist Russia. Russia. They are China, North Korea, or the DPRK, Vietnam, and Laos. Russia is one of the few
And
countries that have
also,
ties to
Russia
Korea
is also
after the
friends
war,
with
as they influence certain aspects
also
of their
friends
future
with
even during the most isolated years,
India.
Russians still have relatively easier access to
Also
military
friends with
travel and
Belarus.
business. During war times, Russia also played a pretty strong role in the influence of various sides in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Today, Vietnam is one of the favorite hotspots for Russian tourists in Southeast Asia. With China, relations are generally amicable, although in the 50s there was the massive Sino-Soviet split in which China was like, look, Russia, it's cool you introduced the concepts, but we're going to run communism our own Chinese way, and we don't need you to chime in anymore. Nonetheless, today, China is one of their closest allies and biggest trading partners, which is interesting because with India, relations have been relatively good
Like I
after
said,
the Indo-Pak
India.
War, in which Russia sided
then.
with India against Pakistan, who is an ally with China. And today, Goa is a huge hotspot for Russian tourists as well. Either way, all three are members of the BRICS countries, which also include Brazil and South Africa. Five emerging
South
world regional
Africa.
powers that have agreements on things like mutual benefit and development. Cuba and Venezuela
Cuba,
are probably the
Venezuela.
best Latin American friends, Cuba being the only country in the
I don't know
Americas
if I have
fully
Cuban
adopted
heritage
communism and played an
or
important role in
Venezuelan
global
heritage because my
tensions.
name
Venezuela
is a
little
Spanish
complicated.
word.
Under the Chavez years, Russia was close with trade and military cooperation, but after his death, Russia advised to support the succeeding Maduro presidency, which was seen as invalid by many across the world. And from there, things got even more complicated amidst the protests, and Russia vowed to support Maduro's side even more.
Belarus also supports it, and Turkey.
Like the forbidden friend,
Turkey,
shaking
I
hands
mean.
together with both fingers crossed behind their backs. Politically, everything has to be incredibly strategic, and not all the rules apply when they play. After the Cold War ended in 1991, relations warmed significantly, but then the U.S. involvement in Central and Eastern Europe made Russia distrustful again, especially with the 1999 NATO interventions in the Balkans. From there, it's a back-and-forth ping-pong
let's not
game.
talk
I'll
about
set up
that.
missiles in Poland, I'll build a base in Venezuela, I'll flirt with Ukraine, I'll give asylum to Snowden, and so on. As people, though, the Russians and Americans actually get along pretty well. The USA has the fourth largest population of Russians in diaspora, and many famous Americans have Russian ancestry. When Americans meet a Russian, they might curiously ask questions about what being Russian is like, but at the end of the day, they enjoy the same drunken shenanigans. Ukraine is kind of like the best frenemy with Russia. They have the largest population
Or
of Russians
brothers.
outside of Russia at over 8 million.
Well, I'm not
and it
gonna
is
talk about what
incredibly
happened in
complicated.
2022.
Putting all the controversial areas
I do
aside,
not
with
want to
Crimea
talk
and
about
Donetsk,
that.
Ukrainians and Russians may not always get along
This was
on
made before
paper,
that.
but they have an incredibly long history and they understand each other very well. It's even more interesting
Since their
that
languages are
Ukraine
very
and Russia
similar.
marry each other. When it comes to their best friends, however, most of you guys, the Russian geographers, mentioned three countries: Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Serbia. Serbia, in essence, is kind of seen as like Russia Junior with a little.
Well, I was going to say.
Both were once communist powers in their own right. Both follow the Eastern Orthodox branch of Christianity.
Well,
Both govern
Belarus and
Cyrillic
Russia
Africa,
are
with differences.
the
Both are opposed to
brothers.
the whole Kosovo thing, and Russians
Brothers.
are welcome with open arms in Serbia. Serbians even sometimes say they are one of the 300 million, referencing the entire Russian global population domestically and abroad. Kazakhstan and Belarus have always had close ties, and the Russian language is even co-official in their countries, and both were former USSR states. Kazakhstan has the second largest population of Russians abroad at over 3.6 million, and they are kind of seen as like the breadbasket country to Russia, as their environment is more suitable for agriculture. Many food supplies come to Russia from Kazakhstan. Belarus is like Russia's girlfriend, who takes many cues from her boyfriend's lifestyle. The heads of state even play hockey together. The majority of Belarusians actually speak Russian instead of their native tongue Belarusian. This in return, however, has kind of prompted a sort of re-Belarusification period in the country, and they are now trying to reclaim their roots instead of just imitating Russia.
I have not reacted to the Belarus episode. I don't know.
In conclusion, Mike, I think you should take this. Russia is an old and contradictory country. It's beautiful but scarred, eloquent but clumsy, cunning and simple. Its people are proud but damaged, resilient and defensive. Russians are unique but numerous, and if you should be so lucky to meet one, you'd be hard-pressed to forget them. Stay tuned. Rwanda is coming up next.
Goodbye.
Hey guys.